that if you're using a meditation object such as the breath or Buddha, and the mind just won't stick with that object, it's just thinking all the time endlessly, then you might try a different approach sometimes, which is to use thinking wisely and use memory, use the intellect, direct your thinking to contemplate this body. That means just using the memory and the thought patterns that you have already and directly when you think about this body, contemplating it, looking at impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, not self, and the unattractiveness of this body. So, it's like leading your mind, that all that energy that wants to think, or you're thinking and directing it to the body, looking at the body, how it ages, how it will die, its impermanent nature. When it dies, what happens to this body? Well, it turns into a corpse, starts to rot, swells, gets bloated, gradually disintegrates as it rots. All that's left is bone and goes to dust. One is using the thinking process, just going through that, running through the body. That's just an example. It could be other aspects of the impermanence of the body, the unattractive side of the body, contemplating the body as elements, seeing how the different four main physical elements make up this body. So you're leading this meditation with just thinking used based on intellect and memory, thinking but staying within that subject matter or that boundary of the body until the mind starts to calm down, because that reflection might have quite a powerful effect on the mind to cut through a lot of the other stuff that we're thinking about normally, until the point where one maybe can start to just stay with the breath, and we'll go back to the mantra, or whatever. One does it to the point where the mind can let go of its thinking. Now, this way of practice, contemplation, using wise reflection, the first foundation of mindfulness, that's Kayanupassana Satipatthana, developing insight into the true nature of the body. You might say, for an hour, we have an evening meditation session, so you might do it for an hour in the evening. You just learn to keep your mind, you can think, you can let it think, but just within the boundaries of this body, and contemplating the body, the parts of the body, the aging of the body, the death of the body, the nature of the body to degenerate and decay. Can visualize as well, or just intellectually thinking it through. But for that whole hour, you're learning to just think around this one subject without going outside of that subject. So you have some freedom in the sense you can be creative, you can use your mind thinking that way, but you're not thinking about other things. You're learning to cut off them, and you'll find after that 1 hour, your mind might tend to want to think as usual, proliferate, go off on all kinds of stuff, but it won't be as extreme as before. It'll tend to be more settled than before. So if you practice regularly like that, then it will start to calm down regularly, and you might find you get more control over your mind. Another technique is to do walking meditation and do it for long periods. So you really walk for quite a long time. So physically you start to feel tired from that walking, and you'll find the effort you put into practicing mindfulness of walking, working with developing mindfulness, and then walking for a long time. So physically, expended energy. At the end of that, you'll feel probably that the mind isn't thinking so much. It's not so much going on. So use your opportunity in a monastery like this. When you've got free time, you can do long periods of walking, long periods of sitting, really to push the mind a bit more, and you'll find that actually will calm it down more.
Going on with what Sean was saying, if I can go through body parts and have like images and sort of intellectually know it, but then also feelings, I start to get sort of afraid for the feelings, and I just don't know how to let go of pain for feelings. Let's say there's bones, there's muscle, there's skin, but like feeling is like it's hurting, so it's like how to sort of contemplate that.
Yeah,
normally you don't have these sort of feelings, it only comes when you start to do the meditation, or will you normally have these feelings anyway?
Well, my body lately, it's got a lot of direct with it, and sometimes it gets too much, and when I sit, and just the thought of going through pain again, it's just, I don't know how much I can push myself, or how much I can...
But it's pain that you've got from other reasons already, it's already coming up from your lifestyle, the work you're doing and things like that. You can experiment a bit, maybe try contemplating the body as the four elements: earth, air, fire, water.
Amen.
That one doesn't make sense to me.
Would you still have that, if you try that, then would you still have these various pains, anxious feelings, feelings of discomfort, would they still be there? That's what you have to investigate. You're changing the object from being a super to just four elements, one or all of the four elements, using that contemplation to see this body as elements. And then you see just that pain or the sort of discomfort you say is an obstacle, is it still there? Does it still arise?
Like air, is it like space or something between stuff?
Giving an example of how you might meditate. So the breath, you're contemplating the breath that goes in and out. This is the breath, the air element. There's no personal being or self in that. It's the air element that's coming in, fills the lungs, goes out, and then the air around different spaces in the body. Wherever there's a space in the bowels, the stomach, various parts of the body, air will fill that space. You get movement as well, you get gurgling and bubbling and all kinds of stuff. This is all air element. When you're contemplating though, it's as if you're gathering up all these different parts of the air element. Visually, mentally, you're doing this, and you're bringing them out and putting them to one side, and that's all the air element, that's there. And the earth element, you go through the body, what is the earth element? There's all the solid, hard bits, the bones, the hair, the bits that feel hard, they all come under the earth element. So you're gathering them all up and you're putting them in another pile. The liquids, liquid air, water element, you think what is the water element in the body, the blood, the urine, all the various liquids, bringing them out and putting them in another pile. And finally the fire element, the heat or lack of heat, just temperature change in the body with digestion and so on, you're bringing that out, putting it there. So it's a mental process of focusing on these different aspects, the four elements, separating them out from each other and from this self, the sense of me being a whole solid person, separating them out. Then you can put them back together again. You bring them back in, okay, there's the air, the earth element, the water, the fire, bring them back in to remake yourself as a person. Then you break them down again back into their respective piles. You can do that back and forth to give you this sense of there's no one really here. And these elements, don't make up a person. They're not something that I really own. They're elements. Obviously, one does that repeatedly and often before maybe the insight becomes very clear. But that's how you're doing it. It's a sense of separation, breaking down, and then you can put them back together and then break it down again to the point where the mind really sees this is not self. And you might find also, the way to know is no longer a bother when one's doing that. Obviously, these kind of practices take time, so one has to have a lot of patience, willingness to just keep with it, endure through it to keep the practice going, to turn the mind to do the practice. But it's a skill, it's something with experience, doing it more frequently, more often, one gets skilled in that until the mind does start to calm down and becomes peaceful and still from the practice.
Would it be fair to focus on one's strength and just keep making it strong, not to ignore one's weaknesses, that's what I'd say, in other areas? And in that way, the strengths, could they eventually use the weak areas?
when we talk about strengths and weaknesses, you might have to define it more clearly. You know, there's weaknesses and there's weaknesses, and there's weaknesses that we have to do something about, and that's sila. In the sense, as monks, we have to maintain our sila, put effort into that, maintain that. So a lot of the weaknesses that we do have to sort out, let go of, improve, and that change, and that to do with sila. And you might say that's just at the ordinary level of practice, is learning to keep the precepts, body, speech and mind, restrain ourselves, practice within the vinaya, the sila that we do. That you know, you can't ignore that, those kind of weaknesses. But then on a more deeper level, some of the weaknesses we can say, well, it's a matter of vasana, which means our character and accumulated qualities from the practice, some stronger, some weaker. Our bharami, how well our perfections are developed and matured, and that will take time, as like you say, as our practice comes up, strengths come up, well, it will develop our bharami to the point where the weaknesses will be overcome that way. But in the beginning, you can't ignore your weaknesses. On the level of, say, sila, on the level of samadhi, well, that takes more time. So it's developing samadhi. When you develop samadhi, obviously you're letting go of a lot of weaknesses in that sense, because you maintain freedom from the hindrances once your mind becomes one-pointed. But that takes time. That's a matter of your long-term spiritual development, you might say, your bharami, your vasana.
It's like we just continually trying to get the skill of bringing stable mind into other activities. It's quite a difficult thing.
To learn to just keep focusing your mind on the present moment, whatever activity, whatever you're involved with, that's where you keep training the mind to do that well and properly with mindfulness, and don't let your mind get distracted off into other issues, other things. Just keep going back to the present moment, what you're doing right now, and you get stability from that. Just saying, in this country it's perhaps harder to find those places which traditionally, say for Buddhist monks, have been places to develop meditation, like cremation or charnel grounds, forests with deadly wild animals and so on, where you go to those places, it sort of has a good atmosphere, confronting atmosphere that forces you to work with your mind to make it one-pointed in the meditation. We have forests, but we're probably not allowed to go and sit in graveyards at night, and obviously there's no tigers wandering around the forest here. So you have to make the best of what you've got. Use the opportunity, the forest, the quiet places to develop this meditation and really work with your mind. He says it's not necessarily an easy thing to make the mind peaceful and still and one-pointed. Like in his younger days, it might take a month of practicing every day, really working to develop mindfulness of Buddha, to keep the mind focused on its object until it really settles down. And that's every day working at it for a month at a time to get to the point where see some results from that. If we haven't reached that point, we'll just keep working at it. Be willing to work at your practice, develop mindfulness, and contemplate a lot. If your mind's not settling down on its meditation object yet, we'll use a lot of wisdom, contemplate the Dhamma, the truth of things. Just keep turning your mind to that as a way of cutting away the distracting thoughts and the different issues that are bothering you. And there's different situations that can lead to the mind becoming still. When they were building the Ubozda Hall at Wabapong with Ajahn Chah, all the monks had to do a lot of work carrying this earth in to build an earth mound that they built the hall on. And they got these little things that we have, these baskets, and you pass one from one to the next monk. And you know, when you start the job, you tend to be energetic and chat with your friends and go on like that for a while. After a while you get tired, you've got no more energy to really speak much, so you just go quiet. You're still doing it, you just become mindful of the movement of the hands. You start practicing mindfulness of the body in that posture, in that activity. Doing that, you got very peaceful. Sometimes the mind actually gathered together in samadhi because it was too tired to do anything else, so it just focused on the meditation object. It's similar to that, what he was saying about walking meditation. If you walk for a long time, you pretty much walk out the energy of the mind to think a lot, to proliferate a lot. You just walk so much, and the mind doesn't want to proliferate anymore, so it goes quiet. Just because you've done it so much, you become a bit physically tired, and mentally the mind's lost its energy to go thinking a lot. So you have to, really keep at it, keep practicing, keep working at it, and then little by little you can get your mind to that point where it becomes still. You have to use a lot of effort in the practice. An important thing is to keep going, but don't let your mind drop to a sort of a level where, even though it's hard to develop samadhi, it's hard to see results from the practice quickly, but don't let your mind drop into a state of sort of depression or negativity where it's really confused, unmindful, unhappy, because the longer you stay in that state, you won't be very good for your practice. So you want to keep bringing your level of your mindfulness up, keep working on bringing up your faith, your inspiration, your effort, your energy, keep bringing that up. And then just keep working at the practice.
When it becomes automatic.
Oh yeah, once it does become a little bit more peaceful, then you get this sense of you want to practice. It's no longer such a chore or such an effort that you have to force yourself. At first, you have to really force yourself, do the practice, come to the meetings, do the sitting, the walking meditation, and there's a sense of, I've got to work at this, force myself to do it perhaps. But over time, you find if your mind starts to calm down, well, there's no longer such a sense of forcing yourself. It's more automatic, more natural. The mind inclines naturally to want to meditate, to do it more. It feels more peaceful. And the more peaceful it is, the more automatic it is. It feels like there's less effort involved.
Absolutely true.
Ajahnพูดจริง So you can use chanting as a way to develop mindfulness and energy in the practice. Regular chanting, learning the chants. So we have to learn chanting in the morning, in the evening, and in your own time as well. You use chanting as a way to focus the mind, steady the mind. And that can be a meditation in itself, or it can be a good preparation for other meditation objects. He said things like, as a monk learning the Patimokkha, very good meditation for bringing up energy and effort and mindfulness in that task. And then you can use it different times. Like when he was a young monk, one time he went to stay at Wat Marp, this island monastery, which is a big forest, quite a lonely, desolate sort of place. Sometimes they used to bury corpses there, and it had wild animals as well. So they're staying at a kuti, and the kutis in that monastery, some of them 1 kilometre away from the main hall, so you're really on your own. And you might be meditating, and he said it just sort of absorbed the atmosphere from around and get quite a lot of fear or tension coming up. So what to do? Use the chanting of the Patimokkha just to calm the mind and completely let go of any sense of fear or attachment to the sort of desolate, lonely atmosphere there, by using the Patimokkha as an object.
What's Ajahn Anan's view on the Dhamma practices?
There are good practices, but it has to be for somebody who has some energy in their practice, not something to take on lightly and then become a source of suffering. It also has to be done with wisdom. So, say the one staying at the foot of a tree, sort of camping out at the foot of a tree, not suitable here in the winter, too cold and wet, but maybe in the summer one can do it. All of these practices are for developing energy and for going against craving and attachments, attachments to comfort, to the things we like, and so on. So like using Bangsakula cloth and cloth from a corpse. Sitters practice, not lying down for the night, so that one is more energized into practicing meditation. Limiting the food one has, so just eating in one vessel, putting all the food into one vessel, and so on. They're all to bring up effort and energy to train the mind to go against kilesa more, so they can be useful like that. They have to be done with wisdom and not taken on too lightly, or when one's not ready for them.